Hi, my name is Roger. I'm 71, and for a long time I was just drifting. You see, no one really prepares you for retirement. They tell you to save money, plan ahead, but they don't tell you what to do when the house goes quiet, the phone stops ringing, and the days stretch out like empty hallways. So today I want to share my story of loneliness, loss, and what I did to feel alive again. Not just busy, not just okay, but really alive. And if you felt that same silence, that ache you can't quite name, I hope this story finds you. Chapter 1. When the Noise Fades. I retired the day I turned 65. I was a school principal. My days were filled with laughter, hallway noise, announcements over the intercom, the smell of dry erase markers, spilled milk, and pencil shavings. I knew every creaky stair in that building, every student's name, and probably most of their birthdays. And then, suddenly, silence. At first, it felt like a vacation. I slept in for the first time in decades. I read the paper slowly, took long walks in the park, rediscovered afternoon naps. I even tried baking once. The muffins came out like hockey pucks, but I laughed. But after a few months, something started to feel off. You see, my wife Karen passed away 2 years before I retired, and without the constant distraction of work, her absence became louder. There was the untouched coffee mug beside the sink, the empty chair on the porch we used to sit on every evening, and that strange habit. I'd still talk to her sometimes out loud, only to catch myself mid-sentence. The quiet was no longer peaceful. It became oppressive. My kids were busy with their families. The dog Lucy had arthritis and barely got up. Some days I realized I hadn't spoken a single word aloud all day. It wasn't just loneliness I felt, it was this sinking feeling that I was no longer needed. I had spent my whole life being useful, to students, to staff, to Karen. Now I felt like I was fading into the background of my own life. Chapter 2. The moment I knew something had to change. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating leftover soup, watching the clock tick toward bedtime. Not because I was tired, but because I had nothing else to do. And then this commercial came on. It was for some online course platform. I wasn't paying much attention, but the tagline caught me. It's never too late to grow. And for some reason, I broke. I cried. Not just a tear or two. I wept, alone, in my dimly lit kitchen, spoon still in hand. I didn't cry because I wanted to go back to work. I cried because I missed feeling alive. I missed being seen, heard, wanted. I missed the joy of sharing a dumb story at dinner, the warmth of a friend's unexpected phone call, the silly inside jokes that made Karen laugh until her shoulders shook. That night, I took out my old leather notebook, the one Karen had gifted me for our 30th anniversary, and I wrote down 3 words in block letters: rebuild, reconnect, rediscover. I didn't know exactly what they meant, but I knew they were my way out. Chapter 3. Rebuilding my routine. The first thing I decided to change was my mornings. I had always believed that how you start the day sets the tone, so I started setting an alarm again. 6:30 a.m. sharp, just like when I had meetings and assemblies. I'd make the bed. Not perfectly, but enough to show I cared. I shaved, got dressed, no more pajamas till noon. Then I walked. At first, just around the block. Lucy couldn't come, so I'd walk alone. But I noticed things, like the way sunlight hit the dew on a neighbor's roses, or the mailman who always wore mismatched socks. It reminded me that the world was still turning, still beautiful, even if I hadn't noticed it in a while. Then I started journaling. Each morning I wrote 3 things I was grateful for. The birds sang louder than usual. My tea was just the right strength. I didn't feel invisible today. It didn't change everything overnight. But those little acts, wake, walk, write, gave my day a shape. They reminded me that I was still here. Chapter 4. Reconnecting with people. This was the scariest part, because reaching out meant admitting I was lonely. But one afternoon, walking past the community center, I saw a flyer taped to the glass, Men's Coffee Circle, Thursdays at 10 a.m. I stood there staring at it for a long time. Something about the words coffee and circle felt warm, inviting. Still, I hesitated. What if I didn't fit in? What if I had nothing to say? But that Thursday I showed up. The room smelled like old carpet and instant coffee. A circle of chairs, a box of powdered donuts, 7 or 8 men, mostly in windbreakers and ball caps. They talked about weather, sports, their grandchildren's antics. At first I just listened, but week by week I started to chime in, and one day I made a joke about my terrible muffins and the whole room laughed. It felt like oxygen, like I had re-entered the world. And the best part, when I left, someone said, "See you next week, Roger," and they meant it. Chapter 5. Rediscovering Joy. This chapter still surprises me. Karen used to paint. She had a little corner in our spare room, brushes in jars, tubes of acrylics, canvases stacked like books. After she passed, I kept the door shut. Too painful. But one rainy afternoon, I opened that door. Dust floated in the light, and there beside the window sat her favorite easel. I didn't know what I was doing, but I found a blank canvas and painted a sunflower. It looked like a lopsided lemon, but it made me feel. I felt clumsy, curious, silly, and oddly peaceful. I kept going. Bad paintings of our old dog, a half-eaten apple, my own feet. And slowly, I got better. I signed up for a beginner watercolor class at the library. There I met Anita, a retired nurse who taught me how to paint water like it was moving. We shared stories, laughed over our wobbly lines. She told me I had gentle hands. I hadn't heard a compliment in a long time. Rediscovering joy didn't mean becoming someone new. It meant giving myself permission to play again. Chapter 6. What really helped. Here's what actually pulled me out of loneliness. Not some grand moment, not winning the lottery, not a dramatic transformation, just small, consistent acts of choosing life. I'd sit at a cafe with a crossword puzzle, even if no one talked to me. I started volunteering at the local elementary school, reading once a week to second graders. They called me Mr. R and argued over who got to sit in my lap. That filled a hole I didn't know I still had. I baked banana bread and left half at my neighbor's door. No note, just warmth. I called my sister in Vermont. We hadn't talked in 5 years. We laughed like kids again. The loneliness didn't vanish. But it stopped being the only voice in the room. It became just one part of my story, not the whole thing. Chapter 7. Real Stories from Friends. I'm not the only one who found a second wind. Let me tell you about a few friends I met along the way. 1. Margaret, 78. She lost her husband after 51 years of marriage. For a year, she barely left the house. Just watched old soap operas and lived off toast. Then one day, she walked into a pottery studio just for something to do. Now, she runs a little online shop selling mugs that say things like, "You are enough and keep growing." And she says she smiles every time someone places an order. 2. Sam, 82. His kids live across the country. He hadn't heard from them in months. He signed up to tutor local teens in algebra, just once a week. Now they call him Professor Pops, and he says those students gave him a reason to get up in the morning. 3. Elise, 74. A widow who started learning Spanish on Duolingo just to challenge herself. She's now planning a trip to Barcelona with her niece. "You're never too old to be curious," she told me. These aren't celebrities. They're ordinary people who dared to say, "My story isn't over yet." So if you're retired and the silence feels heavy, if you wake up wondering what the point is, if you feel like no one would notice, if you disappeared, please hear me. You are not done. You are still here. You are allowed to feel lonely, but you don't have to stay lonely. Start small. Make your bed. Walk the block. Say hello to someone at the park. Try something new. Even if you fail, let someone see you. And remember, someone out there like me is cheering for you, because I know what it feels like, and I also know it can get better. If this story touched you, please share it. Someone out there might need this reminder today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to The Mindful Elder, where we tell gentle stories, share real wisdom, and remind each other you're never too old to feel alive again. Thank you for listening, and thank you for still being here.